Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So Super Bowl week is upon us, the final week of this NFL season. Obviously it concludes with the best sporting event, I believe, in American sports. But with there being one final week left in the NFL season, I think that gives us just enough time to do one final tier list, and we're going to do this for the third time, my favorite tier list to do in football, and that is an NFL quarterbacks tier list to end this season. You could say going into next year, but basically this is where we're going to leave off for this season. So I did one most recently right around mid-season, and for this video we're going to be doing it a little bit differently than we do most of our tier lists. Instead of starting from scratch, this is exactly the tier list that I had for QBs at mid-season. Okay, I made this video, I don't know, I think I made it back around week 10 or something. And things have changed. So basically, right here is the exact replica of our midseason tier list. We're going to go from top to bottom, tier by tier, and I'm going to tell you who stays where they're at and who deserves to move up and who deserves to move down, just in my opinion. Make sure to comment your guys' opinions as always. So without further ado, guys, this is how 2022's QB tier list will end. This is the final one for this season. So we're going to start at the top. We have three guys: Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. Do any of these guys move? Absolutely not. These three, I think, are clearly the three best QBs in football. I think Mahomes, with the victory over Joe Shiesty, finally beating Joe Burrow, I think he is clearly the best quarterback in the NFL, but these three are in a tier by themselves. Now, we move down to the A tier, and this is where we're going to have some movement, so I have some handy-dandy notes down here to remind me. So, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, he's going to move down to B. Now, we've had a large sample size from Dak Prescott. I think at midseason I said, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. That still might be true, but that's not nowadays with how unbalanced the NFC versus AFC QB comparison is. It's not really saying that much that he's one of the best QBs in the NFC. Long story short, this guy led the league in interceptions. He started to have a turnover problem this year, and it's pretty clear he's not really a guy who can go out there and win you a Super Bowl. He's pretty good. He's a good quarterback, but A tier, I think, is, you could say they're a great quarterback or they're a franchise quarterback. I don't know if Dak Prescott's that guy. So we're going to move Dak down one tier. I've seen enough from him. Is there anyone that moves up to S tier? I believe there's one, and I think Jalen Hurts has moved up to S tier. There is a fourth member of that S tier now. I think being so young, 24 years of age in his third season, really his second full year as a starter, gets the team to the Super Bowl. I know the Eagles are absolutely stacked, but Jalen Hurts is a lethal combination of passing and rushing. He's had the most rushing touchdowns, regular season and postseason combined, of any QB ever. I think Jalen Hurts is only going to get better, and I think he is one of the four most elite QBs in football. So I'm moving Jalen Hurts up now that the Eagles are in the Super Bowl. Okay, so Tom Brady has retired, and I feel bad for doing this because he's obviously the GOAT, but he ends the season as a B tier QB. I think toward the end, his pocket patience was even, he's never been mobile, obviously, but he was standing in the pocket and it seemed like he was a little bit more fearful than ever to be in the pocket, which you can understand because the guy's a million years old. It was kind of time. Just that pocket presence wasn't there. The era of Tom Brady molded QBs is kind of coming to an end. So he was still good, but the production was nowhere near it had been for the last, 20 years for Tom. So I think he moves down, unfortunately. So the GOAT ends his career, maybe for the first time, since his first few years of not being an S or A tier QB, but that's the honest truth in my opinion. Lamar Jackson also is going to move down to B tier because, look, part of your ability is availability. You know the cliche if you're a sports fan. Lamar Jackson's missed 5+ games, I think. Well, he missed at least 5 games 2 years in a row, but he clearly has an injury problem. He's missing way too many games, and honestly, I kind of question him as a passer a little bit too. Obviously, the rushing upside's incredible. When he's healthy, there's a good chance he's probably in the A tier, but when he's consistently not healthy, I have to count that against him. So Lamar and Brady move down. Dak, Lamar, Brady move down. Rodgers and Herbert stay in A. Jalen Hurts moves up to S. We go down to the B tier. These 6 we had in B tier at mid-season, I thought about this. I'm going to keep B tier exactly the same. I know Derek Carr is not going to be the Raiders QB, but I just think they want to change things up. But Geno had his best career season. Kirk is just solid. Kyler tore his ACL, but the talent's there, and he's obviously good. Matthew Stafford, I'm curious about how he bounces back next year, but the last fully healthy season he had, he was winning a Super Bowl and was one of the better quarterbacks in the sport. Tua, same with him. I wonder how he bounces back next year. But for most of the season, he looked pretty good. So I think the B tier, the 6 guys that were in B tier coming into this video at mid-season, I'm going to keep them there. So here we have the C tier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move Danny Dimes up to B tier. I think with the Giants making the playoffs, Danny Dimes probably having his best season. I think he's earned another contract with the Giants. I think his rushing upside is really good. He's an elite rusher for a QB. And I think he's a very capable quarterback. Is he a franchise quarterback? I don't know. But is he pretty good? And I would say C tier is just decent. I think he's better than decent. I think Danny Dimes deserves to move up. I'm also going to move Jared Goff up. And I actually would like to apologize to him because he was kind of disrespected the last couple of years. I mean, kind of an afterthought. And we thought he was kind of a placeholder QB for the Lions. I mean, last year he was. This year we thought, well, they're going to take a QB. Jared Goff might have had the best year of his career, and the Lions were very respectable in 2022 and almost made the playoffs. I think Jared Goff has earned himself another year. Kudos to him. He is definitely above C tier now. Justin Fields, I'm going to move Justin Fields up to B tier. Does he have a lot to develop, or does he have a ways to go in terms of being a passer? Absolutely, but that rushing upside is phenomenal. I never thought there would be a better rushing QB than Lamar Jackson, but Justin Fields is probably a little more physical than Lamar, and the guy came so close. If he started every game, if he didn't miss those couple games, he would set the record for most rushing yards by a QB. He had well over 1,000. I know the passing, again, it needs development, but I think that's part of the Bears just giving him no help. They need to build an actual good team around him, and that rushing upside, I mean, I think Fields can definitely be a franchise QB, so I will move him up. Look, it might be a little biased. I think we can all agree Trevor Lawrence is now above C, but I'm not just moving it up to B. I'm moving Trevor Lawrence up to A tier because when I look at this tier list, I think he's a top 7 QB now with that. And, you know, the Jags are probably the team where you can completely change your assessment from compared to the mid-season, because at mid-season, they were definitely well below 500. He goes on an amazing run with the Jags. Way better season this year than his rookie year. Made huge improvements, and he really does look like a franchise QB now. I'm so excited to see what he can do in the future, and I think he's definitely a future, almost definitely a future S-tier quarterback. But man, did he take a huge leap in the second half, took his team to the playoffs, won a playoff game with some great resilience despite the 4 interceptions, and made it interesting in Kansas City. So Trevor Lawrence definitely has done a lot to move himself up 2 tiers. And we're gonna move, these other guys, they're just average. I think Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, kind of similar, so pretend they're one person. Mac Jones, you know, victim of, I think, not a great offensive scheme, a bad offensive scheme in New England. Mariota lost his job, but he's still pretty solid. Tannehill, pretty solid. Could he be in the B tier? Yeah, but he's declining a little bit. He got hurt toward the end of the year. Jimmy G, these are all decent quarterbacks. But Russell Wilson, I'm sorry, I'm moving him down to D tier because at midseason I thought maybe there's just a sliver of hope that he finally gets his act together in the second half of the season. That didn't really happen. Maybe the last game of the year, but that's not enough. He absolutely wet the bed this year. We all know it. He had a terrible season. Can he earn it back? Am I hopeful with the hiring of Sean Payton? I think he definitely can. But for now, we're moving him to D tier. And in this D tier, these are unfortunately the worst of the worst. Davis Mills, Matt Ryan, Zach Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. These guys, I don't think any of these guys are starting quarterbacks in the league. That's what the D tier is by my definition. There's one person who I think has deserved to move out of the D tier and move on up, and I think it's Kenny Pickett. The numbers won't back this up, but I think we can all agree that Kenny Pickett made some great improvements in the second half of the season, won some big games for the Steelers, pretty clutch down the stretch, pretty tough, despite not the greatest offensive scheme. I mean, he could be the guy in Pittsburgh, so very encouraging second half from Kenny Pickett. I do not think he's a D-tier QB, but the rest of these guys, except Russell Wilson, these other 5 guys, I don't think they deserve to be starting quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold kind of, they're kind of busts. They're busts. In same draft class, I don't think either of them will ever be the guy. Zach Wilson, I have no idea what the Jets are going to do. Mike White could be in C tier. I don't know why he's not here. I'd probably put Mike White in C tier, but Zach Wilson was the majority starter, started the most games for the Jets, and he was absolutely atrocious. Probably the worst starting quarterback in the league this year. Matt Ryan, I mean, again, he's kind of that Tom Brady mold. What a disaster for the Colts. I mean, it's kind of, it's people don't talk about it, but he's kind of close to that Russell Wilson level of disaster. Not as bad, but still. Matt Ryan went from making the Colts the favorites coming into this season in the AFC South to not even being a starting quarterback level. I think who would want Matt Ryan now? So his value just went way down this season. And Davis Mills, I mean, he's not going to be the starter next year. The Texans are going to take a QB. So yeah, these guys are not starters except for Russell Wilson. But these others, they've shown me I don't see it anymore, or I never saw it in the first place. I just don't think going forward, I want them as, I can't see them, I can't see any team actually making sense to want them as their starting QB. So that's where the tier list ends. That's our final tier list. This is what our QB tier list looks like going into next year, or at least at the end of this 2022 to 2023 NFL season. Guys, make sure to comment your opinions. As always, guys, I'd love to hear it. Some of these are close calls for sure, but this is ultimately, in my opinion, where I think each QB belongs at the end of this season. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Make sure to like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't, and you like NFL content. I think you'll like subscribing. I don't think you'll regret it. And thanks again, as always, guys, for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.